Hey everyone, so really excited to be doing this video today. As you can see, beautiful day, should be clear all night. The reason why I'm so excited is that a couple of months ago I reached out to a fellow astrophotographer and also YouTuber who I really admire for his work, and I've reached out to him and he's kindly agreed that we're going to do a collaboration video and image, and I just can't wait to get going. The person I'm talking about is Nick from AstroExploring, and I'm sure you've come across his channel. It's absolutely incredible. If you haven't, where have you been? I'm going to put a link to his channel in the description below. So please do check it out, and he will be doing his part of the video as well. So yeah, what I'm going to be doing is try and get as many images as I can of the Eastern Veil Nebula, which is the target that we've picked. It does come with a few challenges, predominantly down to us using completely different setups, but yeah, hopefully in PixInsight we'll be able to merge these images into one mega image and present it to you at the end of it. So yeah, I'm gonna be talking you through quickly what my setup is, so yeah, just check it out. So the setup that I'll be using is my standard setup. So you've got the ZWO 2600 MC Pro. Also recently added the ZWO autofocuser, which just makes everything so much easier. No more manual focus, just set it up. There's a degree change, or every hour, every half an hour, whatever you like, really. So it just does an automatic focus, and it focuses the FLT 91 from William Optics, and I'm using the 0.8 reducer as well, so that brings it down to 432 millimeters focal length and somewhere around 4.8 aperture. Yeah, and also have the ASI Air Pro. Apologies, the neighbors are having a well of a time. And the GuideStar 61 is my guide scope, and all of that sits on the EQ6R Pro. So yeah, just to walk you around the setup. But yeah, I'll start imaging when the sun goes down and when it gets dark enough. So yeah, check back later.
Hey Nick, how you doing?
Hey Clem, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good.
Feels like it's been ages.
It's been a while. The weather hasn't helped, that's for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, and then normal life getting in the way.
Absolutely.
How dare it?
Yeah.
But yeah, we got there in the end. I think I started my part of the image maybe middle of August, maybe something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
And I think if I recall rightly, we took everything during pretty much full moon.
I believe so, yeah. Certainly my last session was during full moon, but
yeah,
but that's okay. I mean, the Optolong LX Stream, such a narrow bandpass that full moon or not, obviously it would be helpful without the full moon, but a full moon's still fine, I think.
Yeah, it does a pretty good job too, and I think the veil was far enough away from the moon, pretty much opposite direction, so that obviously helped a lot. But it was kind of cool sort of getting data like hour by the hour, and I sort of processed every time we got a little bit. I went in and had a look, and it got better and better.
It's been good, hasn't it? I know that you sent me your first night's worth of data, and then on my first night only got an hour because I did a bit of a fail. and I sent you that, and that looked all right, and then you combined it with your data, and it looked awesome. And then since then, I think you've had multiple more nights, and then I've had an extra few hours on top of that during the night. So yeah, to go from the start all the way to what we've got now, I think is pretty awesome.
It's pretty cool, and I think considering, I mean, we can jump into PixInsight, I guess. I will.
Yeah.
Do you want me to share my screen first, or do you want to go first?
I'm happy for you to go first if you want.
Yeah. Right. So hopefully you can see that.
I can see that.
It was pretty cool as well, considering that I've used the 2600 MC and you used the 533 MC, which have completely different sensors. And like, I've not tried it before, but it actually combined incredibly well. Sort of the part that we worried about has all the data, but we still have the star field of the bigger sensor.
Yeah, it's turned out really, really well, actually. The only time I could see the difference between our field of views is when I removed the stars. But even then, you wouldn't really notice it that much once you'd done a few curve stretches. So
you could also see sort of where the images overlapped and how different our framings were from session to session. But anyway, I think hopefully people get stuff out of it and know that they can combine data. But I think that first sort of SDF stretch of that data was pretty spectacular. Especially with that nebulosity on the side here.
Yeah, I've never really pulled that out before in any of my images. So I was really amazed. I mean, I think we've got over 20 hours of data in total combined, haven't we? So
yeah, I think that's where the sort of power of integration time really comes in. I've taken a little bit of a different spin to this image. Just wanted to sort of play around with colors, but I guess the way my usual processing goes is like everything else with automatic background extraction. I find it sometimes when it's such a dense star field, I use the automatic one rather than the dynamic one, because I can't be bothered with moving around the stars and not catching any stars. So it's more of a time-saving bit, but it worked pretty well. And then obviously noise reduction, background neutralization already brought out a lot more detail. I used that noise exterminator from RC Astra, which is pretty handy.
Nice. So did that make a huge difference with this? Because the data is really clean, isn't it? But it always helps to do some noise reduction. Yeah.
So I mainly use it because I've got a new laptop now, but my old one used to be killed by easy denoise every time. It used to run for like 2 hours and then crash right at the end.
It took half an hour for me editing this image, but it didn't help that I was streaming video at the same time. But still.
I mean, this easy denoise takes, like, on my new laptop about 30 seconds to run through. So awesome. And the data is a bit clean. I mean, if you zoom right in, then you can see obviously the pixels, but it does look pretty clean. And then I sort of I tend to use, like, to not blow out areas, I tend to use the easy soft stretch one, because I was a little bit worried about this area here. It was a bit bright, but stretch the image, and then
looks really good.
I did a bit of deconvolution as well. And that sort of sharpened up the image quite nicely. So,
oh wow, that looks great.
If I take the before and after, there's quite, but you can overdo it with deconvolution. It's one of those you kind of have to be a bit careful about.
I've only played around with it a couple of times, but I've certainly certainly had some not so great results, but purely down to my own lack of knowledge.
I've got a pretty neat process for it, which is very easy to follow. But I can do a separate video on it, but it's very straightforward. Like, you don't have to do any of the PSF mappings, and it tends to work pretty well for nebulas, but I'll keep that for another day. And then I took the stars out, and this is, I guess, where we then see the overlap of the images. Hopefully that comes through on YouTube, but there's one here. Then I changed the framing, which is out here. And then I think your last session, then you got it right square on.
Somehow, I don't even know how that happened.
It all worked out fine. We were just mainly concerned about the Eastern Veil, and we got that in the field of view every time. So, and then I kind of took a little bit of a different approach, and I took the colors apart. So
Nice.
Went for RGB, and I tend to get rid of the blue channel because it's the noisiest channel, and then do a combination in pixel math of red and green to get to a new one. And that kind of was then the blue that I ended up with, and the blue, the original one, sort of, you can see it's quite noisy.
Yeah, it's very noisy, isn't it?
And the combination is a lot cleaner. So I tend to do that, and then I combined them in a different palette.
Oh, nice. You don't see it in this palette very often, but when you do, I always think it looks incredible.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure whether I should do it or not, and then I was like, "Hell, I'll just go for it."
Yeah.
And then I just ended up with using some color masks and tried to turn the yellow more orangey.
Nice.
Then bring out the blues a little bit, and then do some red.
Oh, that looks
curves,
great.
And try and keep some of the yellow in there.
Yeah.
And
that's added quite a lot of depth, hasn't it, down towards the bottom of the image in the colors there. That looks phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that sort of blend between the reds and the yellows in there, and it's actually
fiery.
I quite like it, and I kind of want to extend over to Pickering's triangle, because it's really intriguing, that one corner in the bottom. Maybe
so it's our next project to do this as a mosaic.
Well, at this rate we'll get it done in about 3 years.
Indeed.
It's quite a large area, but I actually got these sort of a similar technique from Luke, who's got a YouTube channel, and he's sort of provided his color masks and everything there. So I tend to use these because just for a pure simplicity point of view, and then I just sort of play around with the colors, and then did a rotation, and that's kind of where we ended up with, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that looks brilliant. Wow, that's amazing. Really cool. I like the sharpness of it, and I like I say, the sort of the way you've made it look quite fiery in the colors. I think that looks absolutely amazing. And then the stars were like from the start, when we were looking at it, really overpowering the image completely, like they always do in this field of view. But they've reduced down quite nicely, but there's still a lot of them there, so it looks natural. So it wouldn't be, I think, if you weren't a deep sky astrophotographer, you wouldn't know that anything had even been done with the stars, I don't think. So I think that looks absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, for the stars, I kind of did the normal routine with morphological transformation, and I think I used 75% on it to really bring them down. I sort of played around with, first had it at 90, that was way too much. It sort of took it all away, and kind of reduced it down a little bit, and then ended up there. So no, it's just been really nice to sort of watch the data grow, really. But I'm gonna hand over to you now.
Awesome, thank you. Awesome. Okay, so just quickly, just to ruin the edit of this video a little bit.
Do you want me to pause it?
Yeah, if we could.
All good.
Cool. Okay, so this is the final image that I got on this target.
Oh, amazing.
If I'm going to critique my own image for a second, and I'm always really hard on myself, I think I've overdone it on the red down here.
Think?
I think a little bit, yeah. Towards the top of the image, there's a lot more blue in that part of the image than there is sort of down in this part. And yeah, I don't know. I did a curve stretch, which I'll come to later on the red channel. I think that might have just overcooked it a little bit down here on the red, but I don't know. I'm really happy with it, but yeah.
I think it really pops. I quite like it because it's also taken that, I don't know what you call it, but that nebulosity that's sort of
the bit that sort of tails off
the actual veil, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
That really pops, and you also get the in the bottom right corner of the image, you also get that nebulosity coming through there, I guess, with it.
Yeah, so that was that was why I was trying to push the red a little bit beyond what I normally would, because I've never captured this nebulosity around the veil before. So I was really trying to make it stand out in the final image, and particularly with all the stars. It is quite a challenging part of the sky. But yeah, so I mean, I'm really happy with it. And the data is absolutely phenomenal, way beyond anything that I've captured on my own before. So yeah, no, I'm really pleased with it.
Yeah, I think both of the cameras just work really well together. They've got a different size sensor, but I think the sensor is relatively similar, so you don't notice too much. No, I think you've done an amazing job.
Thank you. And of course, I don't know how long you've been using PixInsight. I've only been using it for a few months, and I still I only know a little bit of it, really. But yeah, this is purely all been done in PixInsight. I've not used any Photoshop or anything else. So yeah,
I used to go back to Photoshop. Like I did certain steps in Photoshop because I was more familiar with it. But yeah, probably about 3/4 of a year I've been using it now. But
yeah, I'm trying to stop doing that, because I do still sometimes do that, where I take my image from PixInsight and put it into Photoshop.
But that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I find things generally a little bit easier in Photoshop still, but that's just because I've not dedicated enough time to learning PixInsight properly, really. It's got nothing to do with the software, it's just user error. But yeah, so the steps that I took to get this, so I started off with the step that everybody starts off with the STF initial stretch. And when I hit that button, I don't know what your feeling was, but when I hit that button, I just looked at it and I was like, oh my god, this already looks better than any Eastern Veil Nebula image that I've ever taken.
It's the sort of reveal of, is your data going to be any good? Have you messed the night up? What's the stack look like? It's always a little bit of a lottery sometimes. But
absolutely, yeah. And for me, it's the best part of PixInsight. It's just that initial, like obviously the colors are all over the place, but it's just that, like, wow, you can instantly see how detailed the deep sky object is. And it just, from then on, you know that the processing is going to be a little bit easier because you're not having to tease out the detail because it's already all there for you. So and then I did the usual background neutralization, color calibration, and SCNR. I had to play around with the settings, particularly on the color calibration, quite a bit, because it kept either making the sky too black or making the Veil Nebula really funny color. But yeah, eventually I got there with that. And then
do you use previews for the color calibration?
I don't on the color calibration, no, but perhaps I should.
There's a really nice trick while we're at it. Like what I usually do is I take like a dark section of the sky for the dark background.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see you got the white reference and you've got the background reference.
Yeah.
So for the white reference, I tend to take the brightest part, usually a white, of the image, which I took that, that almost central part of the Veil Nebula.
Sort of down here somewhere. Or...
Yeah, you just take a small preview of a wide area and use that as your reference, and then as a background reference at somewhere in between stars. Like just make sure you don't get stars, and that tends to give relatively good automatic results.
Excellent. I did not know that. That's very handy to know.
Yeah, that it just makes life easier. Then you don't have to play with the sort of the numbers around and back and forth, etc. So
okay, brilliant. Thank you. That's good to know. And then from there, so I just at that point I applied the stretch onto the histogram transformation, and I still don't know if that's the right part of image processing to do that, but that's just what I'm doing at the minute. It seems to work well for me. And then I did play around with either automatic or dynamic background extraction, because I generally use dynamic, and like you, I did think, do I really want to mess around with the stars on this? So I did, and it took a long time. I think it gave me a decent result. I was zooming in on both the new, before and after DBE, and there was a difference. Was it worth the effort? Probably not, is what I would say, to be honest. But yeah, it did make a reasonable difference. At that point, I decided that my laptop wasn't working hard enough, so I decided to remove the stars. And that took longer than it's ever taken before. But I mean, StarNet is such an incredible tool. First time, every time. I've never had any issues with StarNet. It took a couple of minutes to run, but once it had done it was clean. It was perfect.
Did you have any halos in there?
I didn't notice. Sorry. So I had a couple on the big bright stars. So this one here, and then like these couple up here. There were some halos that were left behind after I'd run StarNet. I thought that they would be taken out mostly when I ran denoise, but they weren't really.
I found like because I sort of went through when we had, I don't know, 4 hours, 10 hours, something like that. And in the first set that I got in the night, I had some really horrible ones, and I was already thinking, oh God, I'm going to have to bin this. This is terrible. But for some reason, they then got less and less. So there was still something there, but so there's a little bit of clone stamping, etc. But maybe the answer to the L-Extreme halos is integration time.
It could well be, and I found, and I don't know if this has been your experience with the L-Extreme, the longer the exposure that I do, the fewer halos that I get.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I don't know why that is. You would have thought that perhaps if you were getting halos, that then the longer exposure would make it worse. But I generally play around with 5-minute exposures. Sometimes I have done 10 minutes before. On the Horsehead Nebula, I did 10 minutes, and I've not had any halos on that at all.
Really, with the L-Extreme?
Yeah, I know. Wow. But if I hover around like 3 minutes, if it's a full moon or something like that, I find that generally makes my halos worse. I don't know if that's just a coincidence of the object that I'm imaging at the time and the stars that are in the field of view. It might just be a complete coincidence. I don't know, but yeah, it's interesting to see actually the L Ultimate that's just been released. Optilon claim that that's been tested quite heavily to reduce haloing around stars. And I'm still seeing people complain that they're getting halos. And I know it's a bigger problem with the faster scopes, and it does say I think anything beyond F4, I think they say probably not really worth using the L Ultimate, because you will get halos. But it's a shame. I mean, that's such an expensive filter for people to still get halos. I wouldn't be particularly happy about that. But I've never had an issue with the L Enhance, and a lot of people have with that. So I don't know what the answer is to the Optilon filters, to be honest. It seems to be a bit hit and miss.
This seemed very random, but anyway.
Yeah, it does seem random. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, after I'd removed the stars, then I ran easy denoise, and that, like I said earlier, that took about half an hour to run. I didn't think it was going to finish at one point. It's never taken that long before, but yeah. Again, it made a difference. You probably won't really see it in here, so you can see that it is still a bit, well, quite a bit noisy in places, but it is better than it was. I was a little bit disappointed that it had run for so long and it was still a little bit noisy. But overall, I think it's fine. I think if you look at it from like the full picture, I think it looks fine.
Don't notice anything. I think it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and then I jumped into on the starless image doing curves transformations. So I started off just doing some sort of reasonably gentle S curves on RGB, and that was okay. I was messing around with that for probably about half an hour because I was really keen not to blow out that lower part of the Veil Nebula, which I don't think I've done. I maybe slightly.
No, I think that's really well done.
I think it looks pretty good. But it's really easy part of the nebula to blow out, isn't it? Because I think I don't know about other people. I'm generally looking up here when I'm doing my curve stretches, and I forget to look at this part, and then I realize afterwards I was like, oh no, I've blown that out, so now I need to go back. And that was my sort of process doing this image. And then I wanted to bring out the colors a bit more. So the detail was there, and it looked amazing, but I was really wanting to make the colors pop a little bit more. So I did a couple of stretches on the red channel, like I said earlier, mainly to try and get this extra nebulosity around here. And I think that worked to a reasonable extent. And then I did do some curves on the blue channel as well, because once I'd done a couple on the red, the blue down here took a slight hit, but the blue up here had like not disappeared, but it had almost become washed out by the red being so overpowering. So I did some gentle curve stretches to that, and that's kind of helped with this part as you sort of move towards the Pickering's triangle part of the sky. Just to bring that back out a little bit, because once I'd done the red stretches, this had started to disappear slightly, because obviously when you're bringing out the red, then the background starts to go red. So as I'm pulling the background back down, this started to disappear into the background slightly. So I did that. And then I think where this was probably, in my opinion, is a bit overdone is I did do a saturation curve as well. Only one gentle curve. And I think at the time I thought it looked really good. Looking at it now, I think I probably didn't need to do that, I think I would say, but I'm really happy with how it looks. And then I did on the stars image, just did the general morphological transformation. I think I did 80%. You said you did 75.
I'm
pretty sure mine was set to 80. And I thought that looked pretty good. So use pixel math to add the stars back in and create a new image. And then I just finished with an unsharp mask just to do a little bit of sharpening. So I don't like my stars to be overly sharp. I like my image to look, especially with the stars, quite soft. I don't like stars to look like really pinpoint in an image, because to me that just looks a bit false.
It kind of needs to come across natural, right?
Exactly. So it's
finding that balance.
That's absolutely right. For me, it's about finding the balance of a slight sharpen on the object itself, which perhaps I could just do in a starless image rather than right at the end. But I do like to sharpen the stars just a little bit, so that's why I do it. But maybe I should do that separately and do two different levels of sharpening before adding them back together. So I can try that next time.
It's kind of that thing I haven't figured out yet either. What's the right time to do denoise? What's the right time to do the sharpening? It's sort of, but I guess it's just whatever works for your process, really. And
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
you sort of what gives you the best results, really.
Yeah,
so I don't know if there's a right time.
Perhaps not. And for me, I think sharpening is a thing that I do really just for sharing purposes. Because of the compression on social media, I do find if I haven't done a sharpen, then it just softens up the image even more because of how compressed the files become. So yeah, I find that it helps a little bit. And I have printed a couple of my astrophotography images, and yeah, I think sharpening does look better when you've got a printed image. I mean, I can see the Andromeda behind your head, and that looks absolutely amazing.
I didn't anticipate it to be that big.
Oh, really? How big is that one?
I think 90 by 60 or something.
Oh, so. Wow. Yeah, that's a good size. Nice.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's my sort of entire process. Very, very similar to what I did in my PixInsight video the other day. Just like a workflow for beginners. I'm still a PixInsight beginner. A sort of beginner's beginner, if you like, I would say. But I think the power of PixInsight means that even with a really basic knowledge and just following a few online tutorials, you can pull out images like this, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible program. Once you get hold of what sort of their naming conventions for certain things are, it's quite straightforward, but they hide stuff in, I don't know, morphological transformation. What a name.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And the dragging the triangles over and things like that, it just doesn't, I don't know. Yeah, it's not intuitive, but I think once you've run through that a few times and you know what you're doing with the sort of quirks of PixInsight, then I think it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, it kind of starts making sense after a while. Yeah. No, there's this stunning image. Like I think I'll print mine and then hang it somewhere, probably as a first project together. It's been really fun.
Definitely. I'm never happy, so I'm going to be playing around with this for a while. But I definitely want to print it, and I've got some space up on the wall there behind me. So
it's just really nice, like looking at this now, all these sort of hidden, kind of like almost like caves of nebulas that are within that structure. It's just
absolutely, it just baffles me that this is floating around in space. And we took a picture of it. It's it's amazing.
All the distances of where this is, and I mean the whole Veil complex is absolutely gigantic.
It is, yeah. It's amazing. But and
I guess really towards the end, I think the way we did this, I think now remembering of combining, I don't know if you want me to talk through.
I think that would be really good. Certainly for me, because I've not actually seen how you do it. You're the master of how to do that. I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can show everybody else how to actually combine data from different setups in PixInsight.
Yeah, let's do that. Cool. So let's share the screen. So what I did is we had 3 sets of images, and for the process event, you need 3 sets of images. Otherwise, you can just load. If you've got 2 images, you can load them in twice. Then it works. But I used because we wanted the framing of the 2600 sensor. I'm going to use this as a reference image and basically do a star alignment onto it. And the way you do that is go and process all processes, and then there is star alignment here.
Yeah.
And then you just drag this into your reference view. So this is your reference image.
Yeah.
And then you need to essentially register them against it. So you drag the triangle on each image.
Oh, okay.
And you just need to do that with for example, your two stacks. And then once you have that, you've aligned them, you need to save all the 3 images into a folder. And you go into process all processes, and there is image integration here. That's here now. You should see that.
Yep.
And then here you just load your files in. I think my hard drive's taking a while. So you just you just add your files here.
Yeah.
If you use, you can sort of create drizzle data if you wanted to, but essentially you just load them in here, click apply global, and that's the way to do it. But for this part, you need 3 images.
Okay.
So often people do it to combine red, green, and blue channels for monochrome cameras. And then he essentially outputs the integration file, and that's sort of how we got to that point. So it's fairly straightforward once you know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never I've processed some mono stuff in PixInsight, but it's always been from images taken on the same night, so there's not really been any alignment to do. So I've always just merged the channels using the channel combination. I can't remember exactly what it's called, like LRGB combination or something.
Yeah, that's the one.
So yeah, I wouldn't have known how to do it if the field of view was slightly off between different nights of imaging and things like that. So that's really good to know.
Yeah, and I mean, when we sort of initially started talking about this, you sent me some DSLR data of the North America, and I tried to then combine these, and that's kind of how I found that process. So you can, even if you've got a cooled camera, DSLR, different lenses, different optics, it doesn't really matter. You can. PixInsight does an amazing job to sort of put these images together and make it look like it's one giant image. So yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Brilliant. Oh, that's really cool.
Stop sharing here. No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for agreeing to do this. It's
no
really,
problem at all.
It's really been fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
We should do it again.
We definitely should do it again. I was thinking about this earlier actually, and now that we're coming into the sort of, well, now that we're in the autumn, I was wondering, doing something on the Heart Nebula or something along those lines. I don't know, but yeah,
let's keep talking, and definitely try, and if we image the same nebula, then now we know how to combine the data and then
absolutely
come up with even a bigger image.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Well, take care.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Clem.